Good morning, everybody. We have another chapter of Princess and the Goblin to read. Yesterday, you read about a new character, Curdy. What do you think of Curdy? He's a miner's boy, and he is very helpful with the goblins. Do you know what he does to scare away the goblins? That's right, he sings songs. So today we're going to hear more about just Curdy. So the chapter today, chapter 7, is only about him. We're going to take a little break from hearing about Princess Irene. And today's chapter is called The Mines. So we know that Curdy, his father is a miner. He works down in the mines, in the caverns. And who else lives in the caverns? Or who lives in the caverns while they work there? The goblins, that's right. So let's hear chapter 7. I am going to be presenting my screen to more of a zoomed in way of looking at it like we did with Black Beauty. All right, please follow along in your own book if you have one as well, though. Okay. So Curdy went home whistling. He resolved to say nothing about the princess for fear of getting the nurse into trouble. Do you remember why Nurse Ludi is afraid she's going to get in trouble? That's right. She's not supposed to let the princess out at nighttime because the goblins will come after her. For while he enjoyed teasing her because of her absurdity, he was careful not to do her any harm. He saw no more of the goblins and was soon fast asleep in his bed. He woke in the middle of the night and thought he heard curious noises outside. He sat up and listened. Then he got up and, opening the door very quietly, went out. When he peeped around the corner, he saw under his own window a group of stumpy creatures, whom he at once recognized by their shape. Who do you think this is? Hardly, however, had he begun his 1, 2, 3, the beginning of his song, when they broke asunder, meaning they went all over the place, scurried away, and were out of sight. He returned laughing, got into bed again, so he's not even afraid of them, and was fast asleep in a moment. Reflecting a little over the matter in the morning, he came to the conclusion that, as nothing of the kind had ever happened before, they must be annoyed with him for interfering to protect the princess. It's a good thought. So they've never come to his house and bothered him like this. So it's possible that they are mad that the goblins had an opportunity to attack the princess, and Curdy protected her and ruined their plan. By the time he was dressed, however, he was thinking of something quite different, for he did not value the enmity of the goblins in the least. Enmity is like hatred or anger, like being opposed to someone. As soon as they had had breakfast, he set off with his father for the mine. They entered the hill by a natural opening under a huge rock, where a little stream rushed out. They followed its course for a few yards when the passage took a turn and sloped steeply into the heart of the hill. With many angles and windings and branchings off, and sometimes with steps where it came upon a natural gulf, it led them deep into the hill before they arrived at the place where they were at present digging out the precious ore. Now, ore is a mineral that they are getting from this cavern. I'll show you a picture of what it looks like. As you can see here, a naturally occurring solid material which a metal or valuable mineral can be profitably extracted. There's gold ore compared to copper ore and iron ore. There's different things that can be extracted from it. So that's what they are mining for. Oh, lost my spot. Just a moment. Okay, right at this. Now, this was of various kinds, for the mountain was very rich in the better sorts of metals. So probably more of like the gold metal. With flint and steel in tinderbox, they lighted their lamps, then fixed them on their heads, so it's like a headlight, and were soon hard at work with their pickaxes and shovels and hammers. Father and son were at work near each other, but not in the same gang. The passages out of which the ore was dug, they called gangs. So they work together. Curdy and his father are both working in the mines, but they're in different little passageways. For when the lode or the vein of ore was small, which is where the ore is coming from, one miner would have to dig away alone in a passage no bigger than gave him just room to work. So it's a teeny tiny space to work, sometimes in uncomfortable, cramped positions. If they stopped for a moment, they could hear everywhere around them, some nearer, some farther off, the sounds of their companions burrowing away in all directions in the inside of the great mountain, some boring holes in the rocks in order to blow it up with gunpowder, others shoveling the broken ore into baskets to be carried to the mouth of the mine, others hitting away with their pickaxes. Sometimes, if the miner was in a very lonely part, he would hear only a tap-tapping, no louder than that of a woodpecker, for the sound would come from a great distance off through the solid mountain rock. The work was hard at best, for it is very warm underground, but it was not particularly unpleasant, and some of the miners, when they wanted to earn a little more money for a particular purpose, would stop behind the rest and work all night. But you could not tell night from day down there, since it was so dark and they were so far from even a speck of light at that entrance. Except from feeling tired and sleepy. That's the only way you could know it's getting late. For no light of the sun ever came into these gloomy regions. Some who had thus remained behind during the day, although certain there were none of their companions at work, would declare the next morning that they heard, every time they halted for a moment to take a breath, a tap-tapping all about them, as if the mountain were then more full of miners than ever it was during the day. Think about this. So late at night, a couple of miners stay behind to do some extra work, make a little extra money, and it sounds as if the cave is full of miners. Now, and some in consequence would never stay overnight, for all knew these were the sounds of the goblins. Now they worked only at night, they meaning the goblins, for the miners' night was the goblins' day. Indeed, the greater number of the miners were afraid of the goblins, for there were strange stories well known amongst them of the treatment some had received whom the goblins had surprised at their work during the night. The more courageous of them, however, amongst them Peter Peterson and Curdy, Peter is Curdy's dad, who in this took after his father, had stayed in the mine all night again and again, and although they had several times encountered a few stray goblins, had never yet failed in driving them away. As I have indicated already, the chief defense against them was verse, verse is technically a single line of a poem or song. So that's what they're talking about here. For they hated verse of every kind, and some kinds they could not endure at all. The goblins hate poetry and songs in general. I suspect they could not make any themselves, and that was why they disliked it so much. So the author is saying, probably it's because they're not good at creating songs and poems, and so they just start to build this hatred against it. At all events, those who were most afraid of them were those who could neither make verses themselves nor remember the verses that other people made for them. So there are some people who cannot come up with poems and songs on the spot like Curdy does, and they can't even memorize it. Now you guys could do well against the goblins because we've memorized several poems this year alone, and then some of you have been here at the school since kindergarten and have learned all of these poems that you could say at those goblins, scare them off. While those who were never afraid were those who could make verses for themselves, like Curdy. For although there were certain old rhymes which were very effectual, yet it was well known that a new rhyme, one that you just come up with on the spot, if of the right sort, was even more distasteful to them, and therefore more effectual in putting them to flight. Perhaps my readers may be wondering what the goblins could be about, working all night long, seeing they never carried up the ore and sold it. What do you think they're doing down there? But when I have informed them concerning what Curdy learned the very next night, we're going to see this in the next chapter, they will be able to understand. For Curdy had determined, if his father would permit him, to remain there alone this night, and that for two reasons. First, he wanted to get extra wages that he might buy a very warm red petticoat for his mother, who had begun to complain of the cold of the mountain air sooner than usual this autumn. A petticoat is like a skirt to wear under another skirt. And in this case, it's for warmth, but sometimes old-fashioned ladies would have petticoats just to make their skirts really full and pretty. So he wants to pay for a nice new petticoat for his mom, and that's why he wants to work late. So Curdy really shows service in that way. Now, the second reason that he wanted to stay behind is that he had just a faint hope of finding out what the goblins were about under his window the night before. When he told his father, he made no objection, for he had great confidence in his boy's courage and resources. "I'm sorry I can't stay with you," said Peter, "but I want to go and pay the parson a visit this evening. And besides, I've had a bit of a headache all day." "I'm sorry for that, Father," said Curdy. "Oh, it's not much," says his father. "You'll be sure to take care of yourself, won't you?" "Oh, yes, Father, I will," Curdy says. "I'll keep a sharp lookout, I promise you." Curdy was the only one who remained in the mine. About 6 o'clock, the rest went away, everyone bidding him good night and telling him to take care of himself, for he was a great favorite with them all. "Don't forget your rhymes," said one to Curdy. "No, no," answered Curdy. "It's no matter if he does," said another. "For he'll only have to make a new one." "Yes, but he mightn't be able to make it fast enough," said another. And while it was cooking in his head, they might take a mean advantage and set upon him. "I'll do my best," said Curdy. "I'm not afraid." "Oh, we all know that," they returned, and left him. That is the end of chapter 7. So in our next chapter tomorrow, we are going to see what Curdy overhears. Any guesses as to what he might find out from the goblins? Okay, we will find out in tomorrow's chapter. I will post it on YouTube as quickly as possible today so that if you want to get a head start in listening to it, you are welcome to. Or if you have your own book, you might read it on your own. Talk to you later. Bye.